extremely blessed, extremely thankful for this. I think this has been like 2 years coming, and big thank you to Tommy and the team. I joined Icon's first cohort 2 years ago. Um, late born Christian, where I accepted Christ in my life in 2013. So it's only been 6, 7 years now. But that in itself really started from zero, started from nothing. So it's been a long way to get us here. By no means am I an expert, by no means am I someone you can look up to, but I am someone who I hope you can relate to, a peer, a friend, a fellow journeyman in this community that I want to just be vulnerable today. So, and this is, a lot of you guys know me, I'm a very private person. I don't even have Instagram. So it's not easy, but it's something that I don't take for granted. So bear with me over the next 20 minutes. I'll try to keep it short and try to leave some room for Q&A, but because it's a slightly bigger room, I still want to, I'll start with some messages that I had prepared in advance. Do you mind if we, awesome. So the topic that we chose was servant leadership. In preparing for today, I asked myself 4 questions. Why are we called to serve? What does that look like in the marketplace? How does leadership amplify that calling? And how can we sustain through challenges and doubts? I want to start with why are we called to serve and how I realized this in my life. The first 23 years of my life, I was led by the world. I was led by, Bob Dole mentioned this, the perception of others, the expectations of society. I was led by which school you went into, what grades did you graduate in, what job did you have, how many friends did you have, how many likes did you get on Facebook. These were the things that I cherished. These were the things that were my identity. And at the age of 23, I realized that that wasn't sustainable, or that didn't fulfill my purpose in life. It didn't give me meaning, because when all of that goes away, and that can go away so quickly, whether it be by my own actions or macro conditions, you'll have nothing. And that happened to me at the age of 22. I thought I was at the peak of my young adulthood, graduating university in the US at the University of Illinois. I was an Indonesian striving to get a job in the US. I read my emails to my mom, junior, senior year, all the time to remind myself of the struggles and persistence. I remember sending her emails on weekends, apologizing, being embarrassed that I got rejected for another internship opportunity. I got rejected for another interview, whether it be because I needed an international visa, whether it be because I said something wrong, whether it be because my grades were not good enough. I just remembered always beating myself up, right? And comparing myself to the top students. Why did he or she get the job offer, not me? That drove me, that built my fire. I have my buddy, colleague Andrew, who saw me in my early years of my adulthood when I started working. That was the fire. That was what kept me up until midnight every day, working hard with him, right? It was just needing to prove myself. To who? I don't know. Because I was sending emails to my mom saying, "Mom, I'm sorry, I'm disappointing you." And she's like, "What are you talking about?" I didn't have a relationship with my dad, so I couldn't talk to him. But I remember very clearly, I just felt like I had to prove something, whether it be to myself, to others, to the people that I thought kind of invested in me, until I lost it all. And before that, I thought I achieved it all when I got a job in the US at a large technology company, which I really respected and really wanted to be part of. And so God granted that and then took it away from me. And when he took it away from me, it was the biggest lesson in life, because I realized I crumbled. I broke down, I lost direction, I literally died. Physically, I didn't die because I'm still here. But it was the closest thing to death, right? I don't know if any of you guys have been through depression, but depression's real. And the thing about depression is you don't know it until you've hit rock bottom. You know, I was drinking to sleep, taking sleeping pills and stuff like that, trying to just kind of like be a normal person. You know, on the surface, I was at work, you know, I was being alpha, we talked about extroverts, introverts this morning, and especially in the Western countries, extroverts are the ones who make it. So I definitely had to be my most extroverted self all the time. I had to be strong, I had to be alpha. But I wasn't being me, and I was just living a platform life, living on stage. And I had no one then. I was transferred to Phoenix, Arizona. I went to school in Illinois, so I had a lot of friends on campus. So I was that extrovert who had a lot of friends, had a lot of Facebook friends, had a lot of likes on Facebook. I would kind of post every party I went into, made sure people knew I was like, you know, popular, made sure people knew that I was at every event. But I didn't actually have friends. Not friends who can understand and relate to you at a deeper value, I guess. That's where I would put it that way. These were good people, but just kind of like they saw a different Jonathan, a different John that wasn't the real vulnerable JB. And so I was in Phoenix, Arizona. Everything on the surface, all my achievements stripped away, milestones taken away, titles taken away, lost purpose, lost direction. And then I had no one to fall back to. The closest thing was my mom on Skype. I didn't really even have a relation. So I grew up with my brother over the first 18 years of my life. My best friend, I spent like, in school we're in different classes obviously, but you know, almost every waking hour I was with him until college when I was like, you know, hey, I'm free, I'm cooler than you now, and I don't need you anymore. That was me. I kind of had that mentality to everyone, even including to my mother, despite actually falling back to her when I'm failing. And so all I had was mom on Skype, and I'm like, what do I do? And she's like, come home. What are you trying to prove? But then every time she said that, it made me more kind of like fired up. I'm like, you know what? I'm stronger than this. I can do it. I can do it. I can do it. But God is persistent. When God calls you, he is persistent, and he will do whatever it takes. And I was a stubborn kid. You know, a lot of people, there are kids who, when their parents tell them, hey, don't touch fire, they'll be like, okay, mom and dad, I won't touch fire. There are those who kind of like, can I get close to it just to feel the heat? Okay, I won't touch that. I was the kid who had to like, you know, touch the fire. And so when I touched that fire, I got burnt. I got burnt hard. And I learned about the darkness in the world. There is darkness in the world, but there is more light, I promise you. And when I hit rock bottom, that light was Jesus Christ. And by the way, just to give you guys context, I grew up hating Jesus Christ. I hated Hillsong. I hated people who would kind of preach at me. I was the kid in the TOK class, for those of you who took the IB, Theory of Knowledge. I was the kid who was kind of like trying to use logic to debunk religion. I was the kid who told people that how foolish they are to be fooled by propaganda of this heaven and earth that is a point system. That was me, by the way. And I was pretty convincing to myself as well, until God said enough. And by the way, everything I wrote down here is just completely different, so I'm trying to pay. But yeah, that's where I was, right? And then I retrospected and tried to like think about why was I like that. And I realized it was all because of insecurity. I was so insecure. Grew up in a non-believer family. My parents never spoke too much with one another, never had affection. Just fast forward, very, very happy ending. They're both Christians and believers today. And this is a function of the transformation that I'll be sharing with you guys. But God has His way of working. They're happily divorced today, but I think for the better. But growing up, I never had that feeling, and I always asked my mom, you know, I was that kid who was asking, Mom, everyone's going to Sunday school and church. Should we check it out? And she's like, Papa masih tidur, you know, Dad's still asleep. So I'm like, okay, no need. I never knew what this church was, and I was Catholic by ID, but I never knew what church was. So when Hillsong was, some friends introduced me to Hillsong, I was like, that's not cool. I'd rather listen to R&B hip hop. And so, sorry for jumping around a little bit, but I wanted to give you guys context of I actually probably know like 50-60% of you guys, but you guys all met the transformed me. You guys met me after my transformation. So I wanted to take this opportunity because I don't have the luxury of time to sit with every one of you to share this part of my life. And I wanted you guys to know that, you know, behind where I am today is a lot of darkness, pain, and sorrow, and that insecurity that got me here. And to close that first point, when God pursues you, He pursues you at all cost. And He'll do whatever it takes. And when you have that encounter with God for the first time in your life, and that looks different for everyone. Some have, you know, emotional encounters, some have visual encounters, some have audio encounters, audible encounters. I had my encounter with God, and that was in the deepest way possible, and I broke down, and I was like, and I asked Him, I'm like, God, so what's ahead in my life for me? And I don't know if it was something I heard in my heart. I don't know if it's something in my head. I don't know if it was triggered by my brain. I didn't try to scientifically figure it out, but I believed that He told me that I had more meaning and purpose in my life than that kind of like achieving a job, getting a title, being the cool guy on Facebook. And so I restarted my life in 2013. I came back home to Indonesia. I was in that personal, non-medical rehab. It was all in here, right? I had to surrender my old self and become a new human being. And that's when I picked up my life, you know, reading books like Rick Warren's Purpose-Driven Life. Joyce Meyer really helped a lot of her content. Hillsong is, by the way, my close friends know, on my Spotify it's all Hillsong today, so I saved my life. Amazing Grace, I think it was Bob Dole addressed that too. That's that song and How Great Is Our God actually was what spoke to me at my crisis hour. So through music, through praise and worship, God spoke to me without knowing the concept of praise and worship, you know, depressed in bed, just kind of like, and just getting some iTunes flicks from friends helped me understand more about God, helped me be curious and ask the questions. And then that brings me to today. So I'm still at 2013, 2014 here in my timeline. But between 2013 to where I am today, the last 6-7 years of my career, the 60 to 80% of my waking hours is spent on work. A lot of you guys know me as the faith-driven workaholic, right? I work at GOJEK, you guys all know this, technology company, fast-moving, extremely dynamic, extremely exciting, a lot of leadership opportunities for young professionals. Extremely blessed to be part of that journey. But I sometimes ask myself, do I let work consume me and consume my purpose that God planted in my heart in 2013? And this is a constant reflection that led to Resource Global and wanting to be part of that first cohort. And asking this first question, why are we called to serve? Can I get a click, please? over time I realized that work is no longer a means to an end. It's no longer a means to just money, career, title, recognition, even self-actualization to an extent. But work is a path for us to journey our calling, our purpose in life. And this is where, at one point in my career, this is where people call it the quarter life crisis. At the age of 26, this was before I joined GOJEK. Again, Andrew will know this. I started my career for the first 4.5 years in a private equity firm. And I asked myself, and I was very passionate about social impact investing, which Julia and the other breakout sessions probably talking about. I was very passionate about social entrepreneurship, social impact investing. I believe that God put me in this high-flying private equity firm to do investments for social entrepreneurs, because that's how we can make an impact. So that was kind of, and again, this is an evolving kind of like exploration that I learned about myself. I learned about the opportunities in the market. I learned about timing. And through ups and downs, through getting yelled at by my boss when he realized I didn't no longer wanted to do private equity, it led me to where I am today, to GOJEK. The point there is not about the result of it, but it's how we got there. Because through the ups and downs, when doors were being shut, the social enterprise opportunities that I thought logically was where I should be, those doors were getting shut in front of me. It was actually God's work. It's God being in control. And it was only through surrender at the most critical time. And by the way, there's a lot of peaks and troughs, seasons in our journey with God. I would say that during my most vulnerable hours, which was in 2016, so 2013 obviously was rock bottom, and then 4 years on, 2016, was when I started that journey of, okay, what's the next phase? I needed to surrender, because by then I had stable footing, but I was kind of like, God, what's next? And I needed to learn to surrender. And through surrendering, God led the way. Can I get another click? And that's when I realized my calling was in the marketplace. I didn't need to directly be in ministry. I didn't need to be directly in working at an NGO. I could touch lives through the marketplace. I remember speaking to one of my mentors, and he said that, I remember it was 2 options that I put in front of him. I'm like, do I do option A or option B? And option A was much more direct impact. Option B was more stick to the past, stick to the plan. And he said, number 1, follow your heart, but don't feel the urge to have to prove that you're serving. Let God do it his way. And you never know if God is trying to lead you to a 10x impact versus impact today. And honestly, I don't even think I'm making too much of an impact yet. I really believe, I was kind of like, okay, so I will let myself still be led by the marketplace, but understanding that my moral compass is still led by my faith. And so that was how I made my decision in that critical juncture, first critical juncture in my career, of what was next. Can I get another click? A group of leaders with the right caliber who are passionate about a collective purpose can create miracles. I really, really believe this, and oops, that's my timer. I truly believe this, and I truly let this kind of lead my mentality at work. I look for a collective purpose in a very loud and often dark place. I think when you're in the marketplace, it's in the battleground. It's like war. War externally, war internally, war with other teams, departments, peers, folks that want your job. You know, sometimes it's very hard to find a safe place. But if you find that group that has a collective purpose, it can move incredibly. And when we talk about impact, and I have to speed up a little bit because of time, and when we talk about impact, I focus on touching the hearts and lives of the people around me. This is hard because it's not scalable. Sometimes it's more deeper impact than in its breadth. Eventually, breadth will come through the multiplier effect. For now, it's my team, and I have a small team, still 15, 20 people, but I give them everything. I give them the love. I lead by example. Action speaks louder than words, so I lead with action. I sacrifice for them. You know, we're taught that those who are first will be last and those who are last will be first. I live by that principle. I try to create as much value and opportunities for them, even if it means my best talent in my team should be working at other places or maybe working for themselves. Click, please. And leadership amplifies this, because with greater authority comes greater responsibility. Click, please. This is where as leaders you will fail, and fail a lot, right? Sometimes small failures, sometimes big failures. Embrace them as a blessing. When I fail, I learn about courage, humility, and knowing myself better. And this resonates a lot with the values that I hold myself to. At GOJEK, we have this thing called the user manual. I have a couple of GOJEK friends here. And so I ensure that I make this very clear to the people who engage with me, also to myself as a reminder. And I put it on not only on paper, but this is in a with public access, the values that I hold. The first and most critical being humility. I remember Pastor Andrew years ago, I think it was like 4 years ago, at one of his sermons one Sunday, said, humility is having nothing to prove and nothing to lose. I carry that with me each and every day into every meeting. Every meeting with investors, with my team, with partners. Gratitude. I think this is where people say, have positivity, stay positive. It's good advice, but it's very hard to practice. But I think gratitude is the leading indicator to that. So if you have gratitude and you're thankful for what you have, you naturally become positive with whatever circumstance. Perseverance, of course. Nothing comes easy, right? Build your inner strength. Find a reason, and a reason to like sustain and withstand. Compassion. And you'll still make mistakes. You'll still sin. You'll still let your ego take over sometimes. You'll still let your insecurities make kind of like rash decisions. Forgive others so that you can forgive yourself. I believe through these values, we can be the salt and light in probably one of the most influential places that affects millions of lives. Because when you think about the marketplace, marketplaces drive economies, especially dynamic ones. A lot of you guys are actually in technology as well. I think when you think about our industry, it's probably one of the most hackiest industries in terms of value creation. It's almost unfair, right, Andrew? There's so much arbitrage there. It's disrupting everything and anything we know. And so, if you're a part of that, don't take that for granted. Don't just, I'm not saying don't reap benefits, but don't just think about oneself, right? that's the hardest part, because a lot of us are not leaders, we're young leaders. We're on the way to leadership, we're still growing leaders. And being the salt and light there is hard, because you will be influenced by your mentors, you will be influenced by your leaders, you will be influenced by your bosses. You'll want to be like them. And you can pick up the good things, but you don't necessarily have to be like them, because remember, it goes back to humility, having nothing to prove and nothing to lose, and knowing who you actually are serving. I remember, I'm going to use one anecdote. During the 4th year of my career, I went from private equity associate into personal assistant for the managing partner. So he would bring me to all his meetings, do a lot of like admin work for him, take notes, handle a lot of kind of like the people side of things, do a little bit of kind of like numbers crunching for him, but essentially personal assistant. That was a very humbling experience. I had to deal with the best and the worst of him, right? I remember wanting to be just like him. He was my role model. Why? Because he was extremely successful. But then through my deep encounters with him, I learned more about him, and more importantly, I learned more about myself. And after that one beautiful year of serving him as a PA, serving him, by the way, because a good day is when he sent me a WhatsApp message at 11 p.m. and said, "Good job." And a bad day is when he kind of gave me that kind of like stink eye, you know? I let him determine the outcome of my happiness. And that's when I knew I was unhealthy. And this was 4 years on after transformation. And so that was a wake-up call, because at that point I forgot who I was actually serving. I thought I was serving this man who I looked up to, who I respected in front of me, but actually I forgot my promise that I was serving God. I forgot that there was one point when I had nothing, and I cried out to God on my knees and I said, "God, if you want to take my life, take me anywhere you want me to go. It's all yours. I have nothing more. I have nothing to lose. I'm rock bottom. I have nothing to offer. I have nothing." And he opened all the doors, helped me accelerate, helped me grow, and yet I forgot him at the high pressure, high stakes environment when people were in control. Next, please. So how can we sustain these challenges, these doubts? Next click, please. I always have the mentality that I know nothing and I surrender to God. You do your best, do your homework, put in the extra hours, make sure you do everything in your physical and mental capabilities to do the best you can, but take worries away. We will worry about outcomes and results. We are all achievement oriented to an extent, but try to minimize that as much as you can, because when you do surrender that part to God, that's when the journey becomes beautiful, and that's when the journey becomes sustainable. That's when work becomes a path rather than a means to an end. Practical advice: take breaks, right? Pray, meditate, travel, go to places where you can actually listen to your heart, listen to God. I think it's so hard. Like, we're always on our calendars, we're always on WhatsApp. I think clearing WhatsApp is the best part of my day, and that usually only happens at 12 p.m., at 12 midnight. We live in a very busy and hectic world, right? So take breaks, listen to the unseen and unheard. Stay vulnerable. This is the best part. Stay vulnerable to people around you, right? I'm a leader. I'm supposed to look strong. I'm supposed to be the best, but I'm the most vulnerable with my team. I always tell them what I'm worried about, what I'm insecure about, what I fear, And guess what? That's the biggest driver of their motivation, to make sure we as a team do the best we can. And build your support system. This was the last topic before me, right? Friends, family, communities. I think the communities we have here, I think this is an accumulation of 3-4 Christian communities, young adults in the marketplace. We're so blessed to have each other. We're so blessed to have Resource Global, Icon, institutions that are helping us kind of like formally mend together. Don't take this for granted. I myself am definitely guilty of this. I don't see Grace here, but I haven't been attending life group myself because it's on a weekday and it's meeting hours. But that's not an excuse. That shouldn't be an excuse, I guess. And I need to work on that. And because let's not take our bonds for granted, because we're all journeying together. I have a couple of my closest friend groups here, and I'm so blessed, and I realize all the time that these are people that I want to grow up with. I want my children to grow up with. I want our values to kind of like multiply around us. And so I'll close my session with one last sentence, which is, don't let work be a means to an end, but the path to being a better human being. Thank you. So it's 12 on the dot, but I do have, okay, I don't mind to be a bit late. This is gonna get tighter, but maybe I do want to break for maybe 1 or 2 questions if you guys have. We're supposed to have a Q&A session. Maybe 1 or 2 questions? Yes. Thank you for that question. And I'm going to give you, this is truly, 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 like it sounds, there's no way he's like that. And I'm not saying that it's perfect, but this is really like, so when I ace meetings, when God's Spirit plants an answer in my mind, and by the way, I'm not smart, I really am not, Andrew knows. He saw me grow. So when he plants an idea, an answer, a solution, a way of framing something, and it's like an awesome meeting, and man, you feel on top of the world. That's scary. That's what scares me. That's when I come home and I'm like, forgive me, Lord, because that's when you lose humility. That's when ego is taking over. Oh man, it feels good, by the way. It feels really nice, right? To know that, oh, I won that argument. Oh, I proved myself. But I would say that's actually what worries me the most and scares me, because I'm like, guess what? Next up is actually the fall. So I'm actually very scared about the peaks. But it's when you fail and you make mistakes, and this is your point of how do I have gratitude of the valleys, right? How do I have gratitude of the crappy outcomes and results? But I always see it as, guess what? Tomorrow is a bounce back. Tomorrow's the turnaround. And the more you embrace and truly believe that yourself, I promise you the universe will somehow work in your favor, i.e. God will come to work. And sometimes, and this is where people always say, oh, it's through failures, God's just growing you, God's working with you. Sometimes it's always true, but sometimes you doubt, right? You're like, come on, it can't be, 7 years of not getting that. But I think the more you doubt, the more it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy for failure. But it all starts inside, and that's through your inner strength, through Christ, of believing, hey God, tomorrow's gonna be better. Because I know if it's not tomorrow, then it's the day after, but I know you're gonna make it better. And I promise you, miracles happen. And I don't know what situations you may encounter, but that's all I can promise. Yes. Great question. Great question. Ooh, I am actually going through something like that. Super difficult. This is very awkward because I have some GOJEK friends here, so they might know. Uh, so recently, yeah, no, it's all good. So recently, so there was a very high-profile talent that was, flown into GOJEK from the U.S., right? And he was promised to have my role for like international, right? So he came in seeing me as, okay, he's the that's the yardstick, right? So I was like, I had a crosshair behind my back, right? In I think, it is what it is, right? It's business. And so after 6 months, he was then informed that he is now reporting to me. I did not want that. I did not want it, because it's exactly the situation you're asking about. Because I know you're a founder of a company, and you probably are facing something like this, and it may be a productive talent, and this is where you will make the best decision for the company. But for me, every decision I make will be judged upon, is this best for JB or is this best for the company? Because what's best for the company is for me to embrace him and be able to give him psychological safety that, hey, dude, like, let's stop competing. Our competition's like out there. And so that was tough. That was tough. I can give you some practical advice on that we'll talk about offline. But fast forward, I think it's through sacrifice that you speak volumes. And unfortunately, sacrifice means pain. So take the pain, sacrifice, right? Don't count it, because if you count it transactionally, it's not a good deal. But just sacrifice for him or her, and everybody has a breaking point to realize, kind of like, okay, maybe this is somebody I can respect or work for or work with. If that still doesn't work, just pray, bro. Like, for real, it's hard. And don't let it cloud you, because the minute it clouds you, guess who gets hurt? The other people who actually respect and hold you as their leader. Because that was what was happening with me. Dealing with this individual or folk was affecting my day, that others were becoming the victim. And that realization was when I was like, okay, no, this gotta stop. Yeah. I was like, this has to stop, right? And it's like, whatever emotions, whatever feelings are happening here, we have to figure out how to, one, sacrifice for that individual, but at the same time isolate that from affecting the rest. And so that's kind of like, again, actually the outcome of it just happened to me post Lebaran. So during Lebaran, when he was on vacation and I was doing his work and not taking credit for it, being his supervisor, was actually when he realized. And so literally that's why my advice is like, it is actually tangible, and my outcome just happened like the last couple weeks. It just got fixed. So we can talk more about the details of how we got there and all this kind of stuff, but yeah. Okay, one last question. Nobody wants to take the last one. Okay, what's up, Steve? Okay, can I clarify a statement there? Just because one is humble doesn't mean one doesn't achieve. I am still all for doing whatever it takes for the best outcomes possible, but to do so with that humility in mind that you have nothing to prove and nothing to lose. But doesn't mean that, okay, I'm chill, I'm always happy. I still get stressed out a lot. I think you guys know this. But so, and you guys know that I still am very achievement oriented. You know, my GOJEK value is the shoot for the stars value. But at the same time, it's how you conduct yourself in that pursuit is what matters, and what drives you in that pursuit that will sustain. And that's the values that I shared earlier: humility, gratitude, perseverance, persistence, and compassion, right? So if those are the values, and these are all values that come from Christ, it's not organic, it's not logical. Logic doesn't lead to these values. It's Christ's love and knowing that you are loved, you are forgiven, that you can do so to others, right? And so I think carry that as you continue to pursue for whatever is set in front of you. And your achievement, your targets will change personally as you have that awareness and listen to God. And that's why when folks are like, are you going to be at that company forever? And they ask me that, I tell them, for now, when I'm here, my mentality is I'm here forever. And it's the same with like when I was in the private equity firm. I was supposed to be the lifer. I wore my passion on my sleeve. Like I was the lifer. I tried as much as I can to decouple my identity from it, but the way I operate is as if that's my identity until God set something in my heart that this is not right. And by the way, when I quit that company, even some of my friends here thought that I lost it. They're like, man, he burnt out or he gave up. And maybe that was, I try not to listen too much to what others may think about your decision, but when you know it's right in your heart and it's planted by something more than yourself, then it's usually the right thing. Yeah. Cool. Thank you so much, guys.
Well, thank you very much. You know, let me wrap up and we head to lunch soon. One of the things is, my seminary professor said this to me in seminary. He says, Tommy, you are so focused on trying to figure out what God is calling you in your life. One of the things you need to do is you need to stop and you need to reflect. And for all of us, I hope a lot of times Jonathan becomes a good example. I've gotten to know Jonathan here for the last 4 years, and he was part of our first cohort, and we've developed a close friendship. And a lot of us are like Jonathan, and all of us, we want to really be able to see what God is calling us to do. We always want to say, what's our calling? What's our calling? What's next? What's next? If we're too focused on that, but we don't stop to reflect upon the journey that God has brought you in, you are doing yourself a disservice. Because God uses all aspects of your life, the good and the bad, to mold you into the person that you are. And if you look upon your journey and you look upon the pain or even some of the good things or pain points, who you are is a result upon all that. And so always make sure you stop and you reflect. And hopefully through stories like Jonathan or different people that you met becomes an example. Each one of you guys have a journey, a unique journey that's different from everyone else. And so embrace that journey, but yet at the same time, always continue to ask the Lord, what is the lessons that you want to learn? And so the path is very important. So I hope that it becomes an encouragement for all of us as we continue to wrestle together. Well, hey, thank you. We are going to break for lunch right now, and then from that point on, we're going to come back at 1:15. And then if there's another breakout session that you guys want to go to, whether it's with Julia or Jared or Marissa, they are in the 8th floor. Over here, we're going to actually do it with Brahm. And so Abraham Victor is going to come and share a little bit about his journey doing startup with TerraLight, but also just the journey of how he got there as well, too. So let's break for lunch, and we will see you soon.